Sleeping Beauty. Eventually, she came into a little room at the top of the tower, where a good old woman alone was spinning with her wheel. For this good old woman had never heard of the king's law against spinning wheels. The princess said, "What are you doing there, good old woman?" "I am spinning sheep's wool into the thread so that I can knit it into a cardigan." "Ah," said the princess, "that's very clever. I've never seen that done before. How do you do it? Give it to me so that I may see if I can do the same." Now, whether it was because she was in too much of a hurry, or whether it was because she was clumsy, or whether it was because the old fairy had wished it so, I cannot say. But no sooner than the princess took the spinning wheel than she pricked her hand on the needle and she fell down into a faint. The good old woman, not knowing what to do, cried out for help. And now the king, who heard the great commotion from the far end of the palace, remembered the terrible warning of the fairies, and guessing what had happened, came rushing to the tower. There he saw the princess lying in a deep, deep sleep, and he ordered her to be carried into the finest apartment in his palace, and to be laid upon a bed all embroidered with gold and silver. If you had seen her, you might have taken her for a little angel. She was so very beautiful, for her swooning away had not paled her complexion. Her cheeks were like roses. Her lips were like sea coral. Indeed, her eyes were shut, but she was heard to breathe softly, which persuaded everyone that she was not dead. The king commanded that they should not disturb her, but let her sleep quietly till her hour of awaking was come. When this accident happened to the princess, the good fairy who had saved her life by condemning her to sleep for 100 years was in the kingdom of Matakin, 12,000 miles away. But she quickly heard the terrible news from a little dwarf who had 100-mile boots with which he could tread over 100 miles of ground in a single step. The fairy came immediately, and she arrived at the palace about an hour later in a fiery chariot drawn by dragons. The king took her hand as she stepped out of her chariot, and they both went to look at the sleeping princess. As the fairy was very good at thinking and planning ahead, she realized that in 100 years' time, when the princess would wake up, she might not know what to do with herself, being all alone in this old palace. And so this is what she did. She touched with her wand everything in the palace. Immediately, as soon as she touched them, they all fell asleep, so that they might not awake before their princess, and that they might be ready to serve her when she wanted them. And now the king and the queen, having kissed their dear child without waking her, went out of the palace and made an order that nobody should dare to come near it. This, however, was not necessary, for in a quarter of an hour's time, there grew up all round about the palace grounds such a vast number of trees, great and small, bushes and brambles, entwining one another, that neither man nor beast could pass through, so that nothing could be seen but the very tops of the towers of the palace. When 100 years had passed by, the son of a king from another family had gone a-hunting in that part of the country where the palace used to be. He asked, "What are those towers in the middle of that great thick wood?" Everyone answered with the rumours that they had heard. Some said that it was a ruinous old castle haunted by spirits.
Cardigan. Cardigan. clumsy, clumsy. Embroider, embroider. Coral, coral. Disturb, disturb. Dwarf, dwarf. Chariot drawn, chariot drawn. Wake up, wake up. Rumor, rumor.
Nếu thấy hay và hữu ích, các bạn hãy like, share và comment ủng hộ ở bên dưới nhé. Để theo dõi nhiều bài học bổ ích khác, các bạn hãy subscribe kênh YouTube của Topica Native nhé.